Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we will take a look at the Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters. Similarly to its greatest rival, the Spitfire, this plane was also developed in the mid-1930s and stayed in service all through during World War II and even after. In some countries it was only retired in the 1950s and 1960s. It was the most produced fighter aircraft in history, with more than 34,000 airframes produced until the end of World War II. So let's see how the Messerschmitt Bf 109 was born. In the early 1930s, the German Air Force, just like in most countries, still used biplanes, like the Heinkel AG-51, but they started the modernization program in 1933. The Reich Air Ministry, RLM in short, outlined 4 future aircraft projects. One for a medium bomber, one for a tactical bomber, one for a single-seat fighter, and one for a 2-seat heavy fighter. The single-seat fighter was planned to be a short-range interceptor to replace the current biplanes in service, the Arado AR-68 and the already mentioned Heinkel AG-51. The requirements for the new fighter were 400 km/h speed maintained at 6,000 meters and a minimum flight time of 90 minutes. It had to reach the 6,000 meters altitude in no more than 17 minutes and have a service ceiling at 10,000 meters. The minimum armament had to be at least 2 7.92mm machine guns, and the aircraft had to be powered by the Junkers 220 engines, but have provisions to mount the newly developed but not yet ready Daimler DB600 power plant too. 4 companies received development contracts in 1934, Arado, Heinkel and BFW in February, and Focke-Wulf a bit later in September. Originally BFW was not meant to be invited, as Willy Messerschmitt and RLM director Erhard Milch had personal problems, but eventually they got into the competition. The work on the Messerschmitt prototype started right after receiving the contract. It was designed by Willy Messerschmitt and Robert Lasser. The first mock-up was completed in May 1934, and the first prototype was finished a year later in May 1935, and received the designation Bf 109 from the RLM. Before testing could begin, an interesting situation occurred. The prototypes from the manufacturers were done, but none of the German-made engines were ready. So the RLM acquired 4 Rolls-Royce Kestrel engines and gave them to the manufacturers. This led to the strange event that the British Spitfire's main rival in World War II made its maiden flight in late May 1935 while powered by a British Rolls-Royce engine. Later in that year, finally the first Jumo engines became available, so the V2 prototype was completed using the German engine. This variant still didn't have any guns though. All 4 participating aircrafts arrived to the trials in February 1936. Arado entered the AR-80 model, Focke-Wulf the FW-159, Heinkel the AG-112, and Messerschmitt the Bf 109 V2 version. It became clear early on that the Arado and Focke-Wulf designs had no chance of winning. The Arado being overweight and slow, while the Focke-Wulf was an obsolete design with its high-mounted wings. For a while the Heinkel design was the favorite because it had lower wing load, better visibility, a more sturdy undercarriage, and it was cheaper than the Bf 109. But in the long run it turned out the Bf 109, thanks to its lower weight, was faster and climbed better, and though its smaller wings resulted in higher wing load and harder landings, they made the fighter more maneuverable. To counter the high wing load, Messerschmitt used high-tech devices on the Bf 109. The automatic leading edge slats and big flaps greatly helped low-speed control. Not long after the competition, in March 1936, the RLM declared the Bf 109 the winner, and this quick decision was helped by the news that the British had put the Spitfire in production in the same year. Now let's take a quick look at the production variants of the Bf 109. The first Bf 109A variant was powered by the Jumo 210B engines and was planned to just carry the original 2 7.92 machine guns. But after the introduction of the new British fighters, the Hurricane and the Spitfire, each of them carrying 8 machine guns, this was changed. The Bf 109 had very thin wings as they were not designed to carry armament, so it was decided a center-mounted 3rd machine gun or cannon should be used, firing through the center of the engine. The A variants were not mass-produced, as only 22 were built before the next Bf-109B variant arrived in 1937. This variant used the newer UMO 210D engines. Experiences showed that the center-mounted machine guns were very unreliable, so the V8 test version was built to try wing-mounted armament. The results showed the wings need a redesign, as they weren't strong enough to carry armament. 341 were built from the B1 and B2 versions. The following C version was introduced in 1938 and was powered by the new 700 horsepower UMO 210G engine. It featured a redesigned stronger wing with two wing-mounted 7.92 machine guns. Though the C variant had a very short production run of only 58 aircraft, it had several experimental versions. The C3 variant was planned with 20mm cannons in the wings instead of the machine guns, and the C4 variant was meant to feature the center-mounted cannon again. The next D variant was planned to use the Daimler DB600 engines, but the very low number of engines produced meant that the available quantities were used for the Heinkel AG-111 bombers. They were built with the UMO 210D engines instead, and this variant was in service when World War II broke out. 647 D variants were built in total. The first big redesign of the Bf-109 came after the experiences in the Spanish Civil War, and the changes appeared on the E model. These variants received the much stronger Daimler DB601 engines, which produced about 300 more horsepower than the earlier UMO ones. The more powerful engine needed extra cooling, so bigger radiators were installed and they were moved under the wings. The variant also received heavier armament with two 20mm cannons in the wings and two 7.92mm machine guns in the nose. Though there were some sub-variants which used different types of armament, such as 4 machine guns or 2 machine guns in the wings and 1 central mounted cannon. A total of 3,477 E models were built. The following F models had a redesign again after the E variants. They featured the new DB601E engines, producing 1,350 horsepower, and a redesigned airframe with many aerodynamic improvements. The biggest changes included new smoother engine cowlings, a new propeller spinner, new wings with round tips, and a retracting tailwheel. The wing-mounted cannons were gone, instead returned the one center-mounted cannon. Some models featured 15mm and some 20mm ones, and 2 machine guns in the engine cowlings. The F model had a production run of 3,449 units. The following G variant entered service in 1942 and was the last to be mass-produced. This variant featured the even more powerful DB605 engine, developing 1,475 horsepower. From 1943, the 7.92mm machine guns were replaced with 13mm ones. Due to these bigger guns, the later variants, starting with the G5 version, feature very distinctive bulges on the engine cowlings. The G variant was the most numerous of the Bf-109s, with more than 28,000 produced. The H variant was a limited production of high-altitude versions. The wingspan of this variant was increased by more than 6 feet. The final K variant was developed in 1943, when the RLM looked at the confusing arrays of Bf-109 models and instructed Messerschmitt to simplify and come up with a standard model. The K variant introduced in 1944 had many smaller changes, but no major redesign happened. The armament was either similar to the G models, with 2 13mm and 1 20mm cannon, or on some models the 20mm cannon was changed for a 30mm Mk108 model. The new DB605D engine used in this variant had a performance of 1,600 horsepower, making this the fastest Bf-109 variant, with a top speed of 710 km an hour. The Bf-109G model used the Daimler DB605A1 V12 engine, producing 1,475 horsepower. It could reach a maximum speed of 622 km an hour at 8,000 meters, and a cruise speed of 590 km an hour. The plane's service ceiling was 12,000 meters, but being designed as a short-range interceptor, it only had a combat range of around 500 km. The plane's armament consisted of two 13mm MG-131 machine guns in the nose and one 20mm or 30mm cannon firing through the center of the propeller. Optionally, it could carry 20mm gun pods under the wings. The Bf-109 first saw action in the Spanish Civil War, which the Germans used as a testing ground for the new aircraft. It replaced the aging biplanes during the conflict between 1937 and 1939, and as a more modern aircraft, it dominated the skies against the Soviet-supplied biplanes of the opposing side. Their main opponents in this conflict were the Polikarpov I-15 and I-16 fighters. During the invasion of Poland, the situation was quite similar, as the German Luftwaffe outmatched the poorly trained and equipped Polish Air Force. Though the main Polish fighter aircraft, the PZL P-11, was considered a very good aircraft just a few years before, it was no match to the much more advanced Bf-109. The German fighter still didn't find a match in the Battle of France, as the French MS-406 and D-520, though they were more modern designs, they were not really a match to the Bf-109. They found their challenges, however, during the Battle of Britain, when they had to fight against the Supermarine Spitfire and the Hawker Hurricane. The main variant used in this battle was the E model, which arrived just in time with its upgraded, more powerful Daimler engines and revised airframe to mount a good challenge to the British fighters. The Spitfire and the Hurricane in general had tighter turning circles and were more nimble, while the Bf-109 had advantages in climbing and diving, and it made good use of its fuel-injected engine against the carburetor-fed British fighters. But built as an interceptor, the short range of the German fighter was a big disadvantage in offensive operations. When escorting bombers, the Bf-109s only had about 10-15 minutes of spare fuel to use in actual combat over Britain before they had to turn back home. Only the later E7 variant fixed this, which had an option to install an outside fuel tank. They had a much easier time on the Eastern Front during Operation Barbarossa and after, against the Soviet Air Force. The Red Air Force was so under-equipped, under-trained and badly organized that the German pilots achieved 21-to-1 ratio, scoring more than 7,300 kills to a loss of 350 aircraft. They were also used in the Mediterranean and in North Africa, fighting together with the Afrika Korps. But in Western Europe, the FW-190 started to replace the Bf-109 from 1942. Some countries used them well after World War II, sometimes the Bf-109's license-built variants. The license-built Avia S-199 was used by the Czech Air Force and Israel, and some of those planes only retired in 1957. The Spanish used some license-built variants up until 1965. The Bf-109 was one of the most successful fighter planes of World War II and the most produced fighter aircraft in history. It was used in all fronts in Europe, and most of the highest scoring German aces collected their victories in this plane. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.